Your dog stopped at the back door this morning and would not go out. No sound, no pulling back. Just stopped, looked toward the tree line, and held position like it was waiting for something you could not see. 30 seconds later, an owl called from the canopy in full daylight. You thought those two things were unrelated. That moment right there, that gap between what your animal already knew and what you had not yet heard, is where everything begins. And by the time this is over, you will understand exactly what your pet was reading while you were still standing there wondering what was wrong with it. Owls do not call in daylight without cause. Their entire anatomy is organized around darkness. Their feathers suppress the sound of their own movement. Their eyes are fixed in their skulls, which is why they rotate their heads so far to track. Every physical feature they carry is an adaptation for operating in the hours when everything else has gone still. So when an owl calls at 9 in the morning, in full sun, it is not confused about the time. It is an animal whose environment has crossed a threshold that its body can no longer absorb in silence. That threshold is not a low one. An owl sitting in canopy during daylight will endure noise, movement, and human activity at levels that would flush almost any other bird from its position. They are built for concealment, and they hold concealment even under considerable pressure. When that changes, when an owl moves from stillness to open, repeated vocalization in full light, something has pushed it past a point that its ordinary tolerance cannot hold. And that point was not reached in the moment you heard the call. It was reached long before the owl made a sound. Here is what changes everything. Your pet crossed that same threshold before the owl did. Dogs do not hear a sound and then react. By the time an owl's call crosses the air and reaches your ear, your dog has already been processing a shift in the surrounding environment for minutes, sometimes for the better part of an hour. The stillness your dog showed at the door this morning, the refusal to step outside, the fixed attention directed at the tree line, none of that was a reaction to the owl. It was a response to the same thing the owl was responding to. The owl was simply the loudest part of a signal your animal had already read in full. And if you understand that one distinction, the way you observe your pet from this moment forward will never be the same. That is only the first layer. What builds beneath it is what most pet owners spend years missing entirely. And here is where the pattern becomes visible, because your pet is not the only one already reading it. In the minutes following a daylight owl call, the small birds in the surrounding area do something specific. They do not flee and they do not mob. Robins, sparrows, and starlings compress toward the edges of the space the owl is calling from. They move to the perimeter and they hold there, watching inward. This behavior has a name in field observation. It is called passive mobbing, and it is distinct from the aggressive dive and call response birds show when a predator enters their space under normal conditions. Passive mobbing tells you something critical. Those birds have assessed the situation and concluded the owl is not the primary concern. They are not repositioning to escape the owl. They are repositioning because something larger than the owl has already changed in that shared environment, and the owl is simply the most conspicuous animal currently reacting to it. The birds are not watching the owl. They are watching everything around the owl, waiting for the next signal in a conversation that started before any of them moved. Your cat already processes this kind of communication every single day, and you have watched the evidence of it without knowing what you were looking at. When your cat sits at a window and the birds at the feeder vanish all at once, your cat does not look confused or disappointed. It does not go back to sleep. It shifts its gaze outward, past the feeder, past the yard, to the treeline or the roofline or the open sky beyond. What it is doing is reading the environmental signal those birds just sent through their sudden collective absence. An empty feeder is not a setback to your cat. It is information, arriving with a direction and a weight that your cat processes with the same quiet seriousness that most owners mistake for ordinary stillness. This is not one animal behaving unusually. This is an entire network communicating in real time, and your pet has always been a fluent part of that network. The question that opens up here is not what these animals are sensing. The question is how they all arrive at the same reading at the same moment, and why your pet is always among the first to get there. But this is only one part of what is shifting, and the part beneath it is where your pet becomes the most precise instrument you have access to. In the hours before a significant environmental shift, before any visible change arrives, before the sky tells you anything, before you have any reason to look out the window, Animals across a shared space change their behavior in the same direction at the same time. Dogs that eat at a fixed hour every morning refuse their bowl or eat with unusual speed and urgency. Cats that sleep in elevated positions move down to floor level and press close to walls. Birds at a feeder bank away mid-approach without landing, redirecting into dense cover instead of completing a descent they were already committed to. These are not isolated quirks. They are coordinated responses to a pressure the animals are already feeling before you have access to any of it. The dog that stood at your door this morning was not being stubborn. It was standing at the edge of a sensory threshold that your own biology does not give you passively. That gap between what your animal knew and what you knew in that moment is not a matter of intelligence. It is attunement. A continuous, quiet, automatic attunement that your pet maintains every hour of every day, in your yard, on your street, in the space directly surrounding your home. And here is what makes this so important to understand. Your pet is not performing this attunement for its own survival alone. It is social. It reads the environment and it communicates what it finds, through stillness, through positioning, through refusal, through the direction of its gaze. Your pet has been communicating this to you every day. The only missing piece has been your ability to read what it was saying. What connects all of these animal behaviors is not coincidence. It is alignment. Multiple species, operating on separate instincts, arriving at the same reading of the same environment within the same narrow window of time. The owl calling in daylight is the point where that alignment becomes audible to you. But the alignment was already complete before the owl called. The network had already agreed. The only member of it who had not yet caught up was the one standing at the door with the leash in hand, wondering why the dog would not move. This is the moment most people look away. This is exactly the moment it matters most to keep watching. Now bring in the crows, because their role in this sequence is the one that removes all remaining doubt. Crows do not react to owls the way smaller birds do. Their relationship with owls is old and specific. Crows remember individual owl roost locations across entire seasons. They track owl activity with a consistency that goes well beyond opportunistic awareness. When a crow encounters an owl that is active outside its biological window, the first response is not to mob. It is to assess. One or two crows will make low, silent passes over the area the owl is calling from. No calls, no landing, no engagement. They are gathering information before committing to any response. What they do after that assessment is the signal you are waiting for. If the crows determine the disruption is contained, a territorial intrusion, a nest competitor, a localized threat, they organize a mob within 20 to 30 minutes. You will hear it. The sound is sustained and unmistakable. But if the crows make those silent passes and then withdraw, if they leave the area without calling, without mobbing, without returning to circle, that silence is the heaviest signal in this entire sequence. Crows do not retreat from owls out of fear. They retreat when the space itself has become something they have assessed as not worth engaging. When two separate species, working from entirely separate instincts, both independently determine that silence and withdrawal are the correct response, you are no longer looking at animal quirks. You are looking at a consensus reached across species lines. And your pet was already inside that consensus before any of those birds made a single move. The dog at your door this morning. The cat watching the empty feeder. The sparrows pressed to the perimeter. The crows making their wordless passes and then leaving. All of them reading from the same source, in the same direction, in the same hour. All of them having the same quiet conversation that the owl finally made loud enough for you to hear. Your pet was not the last one to know. It was the first. Bring all of this back to the moment it began. The owl called at 9 in the morning. The small birds compressed to the edges and went quiet. The crows made their silent passes and did not return. And your dog was already standing at the door, looking at the tree line. Before a single sound reached your ears. What your dog was reading is the same thing every animal in that network was reading. The call was not the beginning of the event. It was the loudest confirmation of something that had already settled across the entire shared environment. Your pet registered it first because your pet's entire sensory and social existence is organized around detecting exactly these kinds of shifts. This is not instinct in the way most people use that word, as if instinct were something automatic and unaware. What your animal is doing is attentive. It is continuous. It is specific to time, location, and the animals immediately surrounding your home. Your pet is not reacting to danger. It is reading the environment the way you read a room, noticing what is present, what is absent, what has changed since the last time it looked. When your dog holds at a door, that is a data point. When your cat lowers itself to the floor before a storm you had not yet thought to check for, that is a data point. When your pet tracks something through a window with total focus and then shifts its gaze without finding it, that is a data point. These are not behavioral oddities. They are a running communication that your animal has never once stopped sending. You were just not reading the same frequency. The owl calling in daylight was the moment the signal became loud enough to cross the gap. But your pet has been on the other side of that gap since the first morning you brought it home. Every stillness, every refusal, every moment it looked at something you could not locate and held that look longer than seemed reasonable. All of it was the same signal. All of it was the same fluency in a language that moves between species without sound, without translation, without anyone needing to call out in daylight to make themselves understood. You will not hear an owl in daylight the same way after this. And the next time your pet stops, holds, and looks at something you cannot find, you will not wonder what is wrong with it. You will understand that nothing is wrong with it. You will understand that it is right, and early, and reading something true. And you will stand beside it at the door, looking toward the tree line. And for the first time you will be listening to the same conversation it has always been hearing. The network never went silent. Your pet has always been inside it. What changes now is that you finally know you are standing at the edge of it too.